All right, let's see if the share. Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar today. We're about a minute early. My name's Cameron. I'm sitting here with Barry from GO1.
Hello.
I think we've got a couple of people on the line at the moment, and a few more coming on. So we'll wait a minute or two while other registrants turn up. But just want to double check a bit of housekeeping. Can everybody hear me okay? You could throw that out in the questions tab or by pressing raise your hand. We just want to make sure that the audio is okay. Let's have a look. I can see someone raising their hand. I just realised, let's just assume that means you can hear the audio. Also, Matthew, I can see Dara's on there. Nice to see you, Dara. Ebony, Shawneen. We'll wait a couple more moments before we get cracking while we wait for a few more people to join. Also, guys, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. So if you do have any questions throughout, please do ask, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the session. So why don't we sort of crack on now, and as people, here we go, they're starting to join as we go along, introduce ourselves and jump into the content in a minute or two. So my name's Cameron Kahler. I'm the Director of Sales here at FlareHR. I imagine that quite a few of you on the line there know FlareHR, a local Australian business focusing on digital onboarding, HRIS and employee benefits. I'm sitting here with Barry Heath from GO1.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yep. As Cam mentioned, I'm from GO1. I work in the sales team here at GO1. I've been with GO1 since inception, so a bit of a dinosaur, but absolutely love it. Really excited to be talking to everyone today from an absolute different lens, and you'll get a theme of that as we start talking through how we're going to actually present here today and put a different twist on employee engagement. So really excited to be sitting here with Cam. I've been working with Cam nearly for 3 years now.
Yeah.
We've been peers initially and become good friends through work, and it's testament to what we're doing as two businesses. We both truly believe in the vision and mission that both Flare and GO1 present, and hopefully that resonates with everyone today. Yeah, so
awesome. A good example of employee engagement. So hopefully we're both well versed to give you a few tips on how to improve it in your business as well. So let's get cracking. We've got quite a few attendees now, and we'll obviously keep a recording as well, and that recording will be sent to everybody at the end of the session, just in case you wanted to go over our dribble in a little bit more detail afterwards. So we'll just jump into a little bit of housekeeping quickly and run through a quick agenda. If you have any questions, technical questions, raise your hand. We'll do our best to help you as we go through. If you have any questions in relation to engagement that you'd love to hear our thoughts on, please ask them and we'll try and jump to them as we get going. But today I'll go for about 40 minutes. And as a bit of an agenda item, first of all, we're going to define engagement. Barry and I spoke about this a lot as we're preparing for this webinar, and engagement means many different things to different people and different businesses. We're going to take a very different approach, as you'll see, by applying a sales and marketing lens to employee engagement. We're going to talk about the needs or the specific needs of HR, training, learning and development, the employee management function. We're going to have a look at the financial impact of poor engagement, and then finally really drill into 4 critical moments in relation to employee engagement and employee's life cycle. So let's get cracking. Cool. So first of all, we thought in terms of defining employee engagement, it's a pretty loose term. So rather than me and Barry sit here and try and do it ourselves, we picked our favourite author on the subject, Simon Sinek. Many businesses I speak to struggle to articulate what great employee engagement actually looks like. They sit there and they say our employee engagement sucks and we'd like to improve it. But when you actually ask, okay, well, what does success look like? It's you get a lot of blank faces, and that's because it differs from business to business, and even within businesses, it can differ between teams. I feel like this definition here from Simon Sinek really does encapsulate the difference between an engaged employee and someone simply turning up for a paycheck. Engagement here is defined as contribution, And similarly, contribution differs between different businesses and teams as well. For some, contribution is, or engagement is an employee staying later than 5 o'clock. For somebody else, it might be someone that is smiling in the workplace and talking to their colleagues. It could be people that are looking to go above and beyond their KPIs. But I think it's really important to define engagement as contribution.
I guess the key piece here, what Cam's sort of trying to get to, is the emotional investment. We often always forget about the emotion that goes into everything. From an engagement point of view, if you want your employees to contribute, you need to create an environment where they're willing to emotionally invest, and that can look completely different in a number of shapes or form. What is really interesting here is that we're talking about emotions, about human beings. So it's always going to be slightly different from person to person. But what is important is the context. You need least to understand and how to articulate this and how valuable it is to your business, and make sure, most importantly, how that aligns with the business mission and vision.
Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to address a bit of an elephant in the room really quickly. Why the hell are 2 sales and marketing people sitting here trying to teach me about employee engagement? Obviously one purpose of the webinar, and our CEOs would love if we sold a whole bunch of software off the back of it, but it's not really the point. I'll jump in firstly. Between Barry and I, we've probably met with the vast majority of HR leaders or businesses in Australia, I would say, over the last 3 years, and organisations who are struggling with employee engagement and looking to improve it with technology, whether that's through Flare's digital onboarding, whether that's through GO1's training, or whether that's through other programs. For those of you on the webinar, you'll be aware that Flare offer digital onboarding and benefits platform and integrate with GO1, which is Australia's leading LMS and digital content provider. There are a lot of themes and examples that we come across every day with customers just like you, who are really struggling to define and then improve employee engagement metrics in their business. But perhaps more often than not, the C-suite and the leadership team struggle to really care or validate those concerns or see employee engagement as anything that's important at all.
Just to add to what Cam said, you're probably all sitting there on the other side going, yeah, why are 2 salespeople talking about employee engagement? What the hell would they know? As I said, I've been in the space for a long time, and I've been, as we said, we're both on the sales end of the metric. And as I said, the twist of this theme today is you'll see how we talk about applying the same metrics. This is all around the metrics. So what we're going to go in today, what I'm sort of trying to point out here is that businesses seem to be customer obsessed, and Cam and I are both on the same page. We're customer obsessed, and we feel that we need to take the same lens when dealing with your employees. Why do we look at our customers that we do differently to our employees? So you guys will get a sense of the theme today, and we're going to apply a few metrics here to show you how to sort of, I guess, solve it in some shape or form.
Yeah. So as Barry mentioned, most businesses and sales and marketing teams in particular are obsessed with attracting customers, acquiring customers, engaging and retaining customers. So we thought it'd be really interesting to take that sales and marketing model or lens and apply it to employee engagement. Why is that important? I mean, this era of customer centricity and obsession of the customer at the detriment of everything else in the business is kind of dead. Richard Branson's probably the most famous proponent of this idea of focusing on your employees, and in turn you will win more customers and engage more customers as a result. What really makes or breaks businesses are its people. That's what engagement is all about. We understand, so we understand employee engagement is really important. But it's a little bit more of a difficult problem to engage leadership with because there's no line in the P&L for it. So again, what we're going to look at today is how can we start to articulate that in a different way. Really important also to point out that there's a bit of a difference between sales and marketing and this obsession with the customer. So for Barry and I, as he mentioned, customers are priority number 1, priority 2, priority 3, 4, and 5. That is literally what we live and die by. Yep. Understanding that is very different for human resources and learning and development, where employee experience and employee engagement is but one of the things that you need to focus on. There is a whole lot of hygiene pieces that also make up your role, which is why we've got this slide on the screen here, this HR hierarchy of needs. Compliance is something that you cannot get wrong. We see that in the newspaper every other day. That is a huge role for HR. Automating processes and using technology to do so where possible is obviously another huge administrative burden that is that we want to focus on from HR. What we're trying to say here is employee experience and employee engagement is really, really critical, but it's not the be all and end all. What can we do to make it a much bigger focus?
This sort of leads on to probably the Trojan horse, should I say, of the whole presentation. And this is probably the only plug we're going to give. Go1 and Flare from a product perspective. It's quite obvious, as you can see from the slide. And obviously, Cam and ourselves are quite biased. In saying that all, technology is your friend in HR. I've been speaking to customers now for nearly close to 10 years around, and you'd be surprised how many clients are still using paper-based from an onboarding, recruitment, training, and it's actually scary to see what they're doing from that perspective. I guess if you look at the slide from a sales perspective, without a CRM, there's no way of measuring, capturing, and obviously more importantly, following up all of that information. Likewise, you wouldn't ask a financial controller to continue using Excel alone to track all of their profit and loss. Once it comes to customer engagement and administration, businesses prioritize using technology to free up time. But for a huge amount of customers we speak with, their HR teams are still using outdated payroll platforms or no platform at all. This is really scary. I mean, 2019, we're a couple of days away from 2020. It's a wonder how employee engagement isn't the #1 priority when it comes to this.
Yeah, exactly right. So finishing that plug, let's talk about, so we're saying we're obsessed with the customer. I want to sort of paint a little bit of a picture for those in HR and learning land as to, really how we spend every single day. In sales and marketing, when looking at the customer and customer engagement, we have crystal clear goals and outcomes at every single stage of the process. We've got teams and the entire business really geared behind every single one of these stages, and we know exactly what success looks like, and we know exactly what failure looks like. Marketing tend to own the awareness, the lead generation, and nurturing the early stages where they're warming up potential prospects for a sales team to sell to. Sales then continue this experience and engagement through demonstration, signature, and legals, moving them from a prospect to a customer. Then we've got implementation and product training teams, making sure that the product is understood, used correctly, where relationship managers then jump in to try and grow that customer into an advocate as much as possible. Every single stage in this funnel has an owner, it has a metric, it has a strategy, and it has a plan. And because these goals are ingrained right through leadership, through to middle management, and across the entire business really, they're metrics the entire business can understand. We were talking just before the webinar, and I don't think I've ever worked in a business where every single employee didn't know what the sales target was and what percentage we were to hitting it. Such is the focus and intent of the business on customer engagement. Looking at these stages and these metrics and the focus, it's really obvious to see, why there is such a drive towards understanding them. And what we thought would be really interesting would be flipping this model on its head and applying it to the early stages of an employee's engagement with your business.
Cam mentioned earlier, for us, coming from the sales and marketing perspective, the customer is point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. We're customer obsessed, and obviously the theme today is we should treat our employees the exact same way. So this is the lens we'll be looking through quickly today, and I'll be talking about the different ways you can increase your employee engagement at each of these pivotal steps. The first step is an employee's first impression of your business, and the scary thing about first impressions, we all know this, is you only get one. The first 45 days of an employee's experience sets the tone for the rest of their experience with your business, and so they should be treated as critically important. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, but a lot of us get that so wrong. In the same way, sales and marketing live and die by our numbers and metrics. associated with the stages in the customer journey. You really need to be putting in a similar amount of time and effort with your employees, if not more, especially in those early stages, and the experiences they'll be getting around employee engagement.
Cool. So we wanted to have a quick look before we dive into some of those strategies on how to get it right, to start to paint a picture of what it actually looks like when you get early engagement wrong, and when a first impression isn't really that positive. You know, we talked earlier about employee engagement being something difficult for leadership and finance and the SLT to kind of wrap their heads around as being as important as customers. But when you start looking at some of the statistics on the screen, you know, a third of people looking for a new job within the first 60 days, or just the cost of the cost of the business when you get engagement wrong. This is the language that you know, that we feel businesses should be speaking about when looking at engagement. If you can put a dollar figure on disengagement, well, suddenly that's something that the business can get behind.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, there's enough. I mean, these numbers here are actually quite scary. These don't speak volumes in terms of how we need to sort of flip it on its head and start treating our employees like we treat our customers. And I'll keep using this word. We're all customer obsessed. And the message today, and both of us are employees of businesses, is businesses need to start getting better at being employee obsessed as well. The churn for a customer and the churn on an employee, from both of our perspective, we're talking about this before, are just the same.
Yeah.
It's as impactful on the business as anything.
Yeah, 100%. So let's have a look at some of those moments. I wanted to revisit this definition just very, very quickly. Yeah, again, focusing on trying to look at these different stages and creating an environment where new employees actually want to emotionally invest in your business. So let's have a look at those different stages and how they relate in terms of employee engagement. So the marketing stage, or if we've termed it here, the recruitment stage, what does this look like? Well, first of all, marketing teams really understand when looking for customers who the perfect customer is to begin with. If we look at Flare, for example, we offer a free onboarding HR and benefits tool. So the options that we can sell to are really, really widespread. However, going back to that hierarchy of needs, we know that businesses who struggle with compliance, who are hiring huge numbers of employees at a time, and are hurting with the admin, and are also hiring young people who have really interesting engagement needs than others, they're going to value our services the most. So what marketing do is they target those types of businesses with laser sharp vision, because that's where we know that we win. How many of your recruitment teams can say that you do the same thing? You know, similarly, when looking to fill a position, maybe you need to look within your own employee base and see who's emotionally invested and contributing, and start to ask the question, well, why are those employees contributing more than others? Is it a certain demographic? Do they come from certain teams? Is it frontline managers? Is it the flexible working arrangement that some teams have? If you can really understand and articulate what values of your business employees that employees value, what areas get them excited, and start articulating that in the recruitment process, hopefully you'll start to find those low-hanging fruit, those perfect candidates that you can engage, sort of popping to the top. Barry and I were talking about this earlier. When it comes to recruitment, so much of it is, do you have these desired skill sets? Do you have this degree or that degree? Have you got 4 years software experience? How many of those job ads are really focusing on what type of person are you? You know, if you're constantly just hiring people that are matching a skill set, then it's no surprise that they're not engaged in your business, and then you multiply that again and again and again, and you start to have an engagement problem.
100%. I mean, to add to that, I mean, sort of thinking on the flip side, and this is quite a controversial statement, but you know, as Cam mentioned there, you know, the old model is you needed a degree, you needed X amount of experience, you needed to be able to maybe articulate on paper this and that. And I think we're missing the boat a bit there in terms of actually not looking at it from a different lens again. You know, I mean, just because someone's over X amount of age, they don't have a degree on their resume, you know, but our hiring managers aren't good enough at actually looking deeper into that, because as humans, we only have the ability to be able to put in 2 pages what we have on our resume.
And I'm not saying we need to interview every single person that applies for the job, because that's not possible and sort of contradicts the theme, but we need to get better at identifying people based on different metrics.
100%. The other big piece that we spend a lot of time discussing here, and we discuss a lot with businesses every single day, is the again, going back to that emotional investment. It is so critical to focus on the candidate experience. Most recruiters are pretty good at this, but it can fall flat with some time poor managers, and this is not okay if this is the time you're trying to set the tone for emotional investment and getting your candidates to engage with your business. If you think about it just sort of contextually, what's the frame of mind when you're applying for a job? At best, you're working somewhere that you hate and you want to get out of it, at best. But often it can be a lot more delicate. Maybe the candidate is returning to the workforce after an extended period of absence. Maybe they're coming back from maternity leave. Maybe they've just been made redundant from their prior job that they loved, and then looking for meaningful work or any work at all. They've gone through vague job ads that kind of speak a little bit about the role and say that they're pretty generic. They don't have salary details, or you've dealt with a whole bunch of recruiters. And so when you turn up to the interview, I don't care how senior you are, you're pretty nervous a lot of the time. How do you think that candidate feels? They're trying to get candidate investment. When they sit down to chat with a manager or a leader who hasn't even bothered to read their CV, or they've just printed it out, or they're not even really paying that much attention. And after sometimes multiple interviews, unsuccessful, sitting there by the phone waiting to hear back. If we flip this and have a look at marketing and how marketing treat leads, how marketing treat potential customers, they would be fired if they did the same thing, because they're never going to buy the product. If somebody books a demo of your product, you're going to hear back within the hour. And even if you're unsuccessful, they're going to tell you why, and they're going to give you additional resources and start to send you content to guide you, to help you assess the topic in a little bit more detail. Candidate engagement, kind of similar to customer engagement, it starts well before you know who the candidate even is. And I think that's sort of the point that we're making. The stories that previous employees or unsuccessful or successful candidates tell their friends, or the reviews they leave on platforms like Glassdoor, that they are shaping and informing candidates whether they should emotionally invest in this business in the first place before they've even turned up for the interview or clicked apply. So I think that when it comes to engagement in this particular stage of the employee funnel, in the same way that marketing own their number, it's important that metrics are applied to candidate engagement too. Use surveys, equip and manage frontline managers to actually follow the process that you've deemed as important. Come with a strategy and come with a plan. Educate all of the stakeholders as to why this is important from the top down to the bottom. And above all, you've got to prioritize and respect the candidate in the very same way that businesses prioritize and respect leads.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to that as well. I mean, from a marketing perspective, even if you don't end up using a product, service, etc., the marketing team will still drip feed our campaigns, making sure they're engaged, and that could be 1, 2, 3 years. From a onboarding recruitment perspective, just because someone didn't get the job, I think we need to get better as organizations in this day and age, especially with technology. It's so much easier to do. Even though that person didn't get the job, follow up with them in 6 months and ask a simple question. Hope you found work, how's it going? Just stay in touch. It's not that hard to do. It's those little things. That person's always going to remember that, even though they didn't get the job, a bit of a sour note. But if I got a follow-up email 6 months saying, hey, I hope you found work, it's those little things that turn your company from being great to amazing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, if you think about the best employers lists that come out, even if we think of, most famous examples of like Google, that when you think of working at Google, everybody knows what that looks like in their brain, and that's because of, or in their imagination, because of the stories that people have told about working at Google. Again, they focus on the candidate, and so should you. So should we look at the next stage?
Yeah, definitely.
Again, guys, ask any questions along the way. I'm hoping we're going to have some time at the end. So next stage. So again, typically when marketing hand off a lead to sales, somebody is interested in the business and trying to sell to them. I guess the equivalent from a candidate perspective is they've accepted the role and we're starting to onboard that employee. Ideally with marketing, sales are trying to turn this lead into a customer for life. And it's the same thing. When we're onboarding that employee, we really want to be focusing on trying to set the tone that they're going to become, an employee for, well, maybe not life, but as long as possible. Most businesses spend a huge amount of time and money on tools, personnel, technology to maximize their results at this stage of the sales and marketing funnel, so that customers who sign up to your product but never use it or back out at the last minute is minimized. Obviously, that is a huge cost, and we're very, very well aware of that cost. Recruitment too takes a huge amount of time and effort and cost. So when businesses finally do get a candidate that they want to sign the contract, it's absolutely a cause for celebration, but the engagement process has hit a really, really critical point. As we discussed earlier, from here through to the next sort of 45 days are super critical to employee engagement and contribution, because similarly, the investment or the emotional investment on the employee side is extremely significant. They've decided to work for you, and they're yet to sort of see what that return is going to look like. Again, thinking contextually, think about the first day. In your career, you probably only have, the likelihood is you probably have a handful of first days, maybe 2 handfuls if we're talking about 2020 and the amount of sort of contingent workers. So every single one of these days, think about it yourself, everyone on the webinar. If you look back at your first days, you remember every single one clear as day, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. So personally, I've had 5 first days in my professional career. I remember every single one of them as if they were yesterday. So when we talk about emotional investment on the first day, the stakes are really, really high. What does the first day look like in your business? And how does your business treat that first day from a hiring manager's perspective? Is it as momentous an occasion for you as it is for the employee, or is it just another new startup? I think that's a massive point that a lot of businesses we speak to miss, because they're not really helping create a beautiful first day experience that's going to live on in the employee's imagination for the rest of their life. It's just another first day. Unfortunately, it's because businesses are under the pump, unprepared, and don't understand that this is such an important point through pre-boarding and onboarding, that first interaction with your organization. We've all probably had experiences in the past where onboarding can be laborious and time-consuming, and there's bits of paper going back and forth via email. I know that probably my worst example, and maybe people on the webinar can resonate with this, I started on my first day. My manager was on leave because they booked a holiday, and I was meant to start a week earlier, and I had to onboard myself. Nobody knew I was starting. I had to fill in a whole bunch of paperwork, try and find a desk to sit at. Think about emotional investment. You're pretty open to becoming one of those statistics on the screen in relation to churn that we sort of talked about earlier. In terms of getting it right, I actually do want to brag a little bit about Flare here, because it's something that we do pride ourselves on, and maybe there's some tips that we can give you here that you can take away yourselves. And you would expect that we're good at this being an onboarding company. We recently had a couple of new starters, for example, and through their digital onboarding experience on the platform, we were able to personalize the experience for them. So we greet employees with their favorite coffee. We take them to their favorite lunch spot for lunch. They've got their sort of welcome pack with their shirt size in the right size. So little touches like that make a big difference. We've diarized sessions with every department head. We've got a session with the CEO to talk about values. They've also have pre-read a copy of a book called The Alliance, which is what we base our employee experience and this concept of tours of duties on. What we're trying to do is create an experience which is highly personalized and caters in some way to each individual's unique taste. Understanding that emotional investment is unique to each individual, that's a big part of what we're trying to do. But we also want to amplify what contribution means at Flare. This process is continuously tweaked and improved upon based on feedback and results. Similarly to the way that sales teams are constantly searching for different ways to win customers and to run a more effective sales process. So I've seen some great ideas from our customers as well that are doing really, really cool things in relation to first days. One customer, for example, sent a bottle of champagne from the hiring manager a week before, saying it's time to celebrate this milestone. We're so excited to have you on board. Some people are inducting employees in pods so that those first day nerves are shared and you have that sense of community. Some are assigning an onboarding buddy. There's a whole lot of different little tips and techniques.
Yeah.
I think what the most important thing here is that the first day, we believe, or I believe, really sets the tone and goes a huge way towards allowing an employee to emotionally invest. If you're asking employees to emotionally invest in you, you've got to put in some effort yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the day and age of just having a welcome pack on your desk at day one, I mean, it's probably important because you would have been able to find your desk that day, Cam. But the day of just having a computer, which you're going to get for your work anyway, a hoodie, and a notepad and a pen, I can truly say it doesn't resonate with me. I think we really need to get better. And you know, as Cam said, the great thing with the Flare platform is that you can actually find out what their favorite coffee is, what their favorite meal is. And on day one, you can make that experience because at day one, as Cam said, you get a handful of those days in your career. And I'm sure the one where they implement these sort of strategies, those stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, absolutely. And similarly with customers, we're trying to ultimately grow them and turn them into advocates, and every single one of these touch points is a great opportunity to move them along that funnel. Talking about moving along the funnel, let's get into the first 45 days, or what that looks like in terms of the customer journey is when a customer has the product in their hands and they're starting to use it and you're teaching them how to use it.
Yeah, I guess the key element here is if you're talking about sales in particular, that's where Cam and I come in, and we talk to a lot of you on the webinar today as potential clients. I can see Matthew's on the call. But what that means from us, and if you try to translate this back to the employee side of it, is that when you sell to a client, the contract signed, it's a milestone we all celebrate, but that's just the first part.
Yeah.
That's where the partnership starts, and I don't like. When I speak to clients, I don't call it a client-client relationship. For us, it's more of a partnership. And that's the way I see it when you're with employees. It should be more of a partnership. It's no set and forget. And that's just day one, as Cam pointed out. Yes, they've come on board. And that's, as I said, that's where everything just starts, the relationship, the partnership. And people often ask, why invest in the training moving on from there? I have a really, one of my favorite celebrities, personalities is Richard Branson. He had a famous quote that came out and said, he was asked a question, and I'll get to the quote, is why invest in training in your staff? Because all they're going to do is leave. And he said, because if you don't and they stay, they're going to be a lot more detrimental to the business. And the same thing flows onto your employees. I think Cam had a slide up around the cost around what it is if an employee leaves within those first 60 days. It was something around the $16,000 mark. I don't know. I know that's one pull from different stats, but I think it's a lot more than that. Like if you go all the way from placing a job ad on LinkedIn, Seek, through to the hiring manager having to pass it on to the sales manager, the interview time, and then they do go through the whole training process and they end up staying with the business and they leave within that 60 days. I think the cost there is a lot more.
100%.
What we do at GO1 is we pull in multiple different content. We're lucky enough now today to call ourselves the world's largest content provider. The great thing is we're not one content provider. What we do is we aggregate multiple different content providers under one solution. And what you can then do from there is actually refresh your training, be able to offer different styles and formats. We started GO1, and sort of just to give you a bit of history, we started with one content provider and 8 courses. And it was originally called GO1 Compliant. Compliance is all king. You guys will all know that. You need to tick that legal box. From a compliance perspective, fast forward to today, we've now got 13 different providers in Australia that all meet the Australian legislation. For example, if you want to now roll out a bullying and harassment or a sexual harassment or an equal opportunity course, you've now got 10 to 13 different choices that you can roll out to your staff. We're not going to sit here and tell you what training is best for your business. We understand that every business's learning culture is different. Likewise, when each employee comes into their position, every employee is different. You can't bucket salespeople as the same people, marketing as the same people, HR. We're all human beings, and we pointed on that before. In saying that, the human element with our library now to increase employee engagement, it's not just about when they log in and you're giving them 5 compliance courses anymore. Cam mentioned the book there, the Book Alliance. We've just incorporated a training provider available to all of our clients and prospects. It's called Blinkist. I hate reading books. So if Cam, and I'm going to talk to Cam about this afterwards from a sales perspective, if you don't want to read the whole book, we've now got Blinkist where it'll give you the 15 best minutes of that particular book and all the key takeaways. That's another way to be engaging, because I don't like reading the whole book and I don't want to be forced to read the whole book. So we're doing really cool stuff like that to make that more engaging. And then the messaging could be, we expect all of our employees to read this book, but if you're not into reading, it has Blinkist and they'll give you the 15 minutes of that particular book. Another cool one that you can do is, training. It's self-directed learning, giving employees the ability to go in there and do it on their own. From an HR perspective, you can curate playlists. At GO1, we implemented the manager dashboard. I think the manager is the most critical person when it comes to engaging with staff. They're the direct line of in terms of reporting. The ability now for managers to push training, make it relevant to their particular roles. No one knows an employee better than their manager. Likewise, no employee knows anyone better than their manager. There's often a love-hate relationship with those, and that can often be make or break for both, I guess. Cool little things that you can do to increase your employee engagement through training. Basically, it's similar things like with our library on Are You OK Day. We've got the Are You OK training in our library. The ability to then go enroll every single staff member into that Are You OK course 2 days before, a day before. We all like to think we know what Are You OK is around. It's mental health, but do we actually know what the deeper meaning? The course is only 5 minutes. But once I got that enrollment, do you actually understand what Are You OK Day is about? And you get that in, we can see what the engagement and completion rate on that particular course. And we're talking about engagement today. So those are the little things. It's not just about giving another leadership course or a customer service course. It's thinking about these days that we have now and how we can actually make it a bit more engaging and relevant to particular days, or as Cam mentioned, Cam, you talk about the manager being pivotal in all of this, right?
100%. So I think so in a previous life I was a sales trainer actually, and the worst part of that job was the fact that they would leave the training room super excited and their frontline managers never followed up. I imagine some of the HR managers there and learning and development people on the webinar here are sort of nodding their heads, because frontline managers are so key. We've heard the quote that people leave managers, not jobs, and that's super important. And again, sort of going back to this, that first 45 days that's setting the tone, this is where those managers play a pivotal role. So if you've got a plan, you've got metrics, and you're really focused on employee engagement, the key is to get managers on board and understanding and getting behind some of those metrics and plans. Like if we look at, we were talking again before this with Flare, with GO1, with every business that I've sort of worked at, when a customer first starts, from a sales perspective, from a customer success perspective, you sit them down and you say, this is what your first year looks like. Our aim is to grow you into the best and biggest customer as possible. Here's where we're going to set different milestones, and this is when we're going to check in with you. The ultimate aim is to grow that into a huge customer. In management, it's the same time. But how often do you hear about frontline managers not turning up to a one-on-one? Why should an employee emotionally invest in your business if you can't even be bothered turning up for their one-on-ones, or if you can't even set out a plan of what growth looks like? Ultimately, it's the same thing, right? When an employee starts in a business, you want to grow them into the best employee they can possibly be and add even incremental value to the organization. Turn up to the one-on-ones. A salesperson would never miss a meeting, so your frontline manager should never miss a meeting about development of an employee either. It sets the completely wrong tone, and again, I think it's a big reason why employees are disengaged. So 100% invest in your frontline managers, because they are the glue between leadership programs and the strategy and the employees that are coming in the front door.
Yeah, 100%. When we're onboarding a client from a product training perspective, we adopt the train the trainer approach, in that we want to train you as if you knew our product back to front. In saying that, that doesn't work for everyone. A lot of our clients like their hands to be held. They want that extra love, and we're prepared to give that. Likewise with employees, you know, some prefer to do training on their own. That's where self-directed training comes in. Other employees need a bit more love and nurturing and a bit more of a push. And I think that's where we need to be able to identify based on this case-by-case basis.
I'm just looking at time, so we'll spend a little bit of time on this last piece here, account management growth. And I mean, really the purpose of this webinar was the first 45 days anyway. So I think what we're talking about is that first 45 days sets the tone for everything that comes next.
The aim of the customer management is growing the customer into the biggest advocate possible. Advocate being the key word. We have a little saying in sales that referrals. Do you have any stats on referrals, Cam? I know you love your stats.
I don't actually.
No. Basically, referrals and sales is our lifeblood. And if we don't have clients as advocates, it's the cost of acquiring a new lead. Whereas if you've got someone advocating for you, it means absolutely everything. Why should this be any different to employees? We were talking before this, Cam mentioned there before about, it's as important to grow a new customer into the biggest customer. Likewise, it's important to grow a new employee into that best employee. We're talking about an employee, we're sitting here as an employee. When's the right time to ask for a pay rise or a promotion? I think we need to get better as organizations in approaching that employee, identifying that they're a key player in the organization, they live and breathe the organization, the key values, the mission. I think we need to get better at that. Regular reviews, checking in with them, but it's not just a check-in. Just make sure that you're actually following up. And this is where we keep talking about middle managers need to be able to play a role in all of this. Without the middle manager, they know the employees that they're working with better, and the employee knows them better than anyone else. Retentions of customers versus retention employees. We've said this before. They're just as important of each other. I'll probably go the other way, and I'm sort of throwing a curveball here, being a salesperson, but being an employee as well. Without your employees being engaged, there's no way they're going to be, your customers are going to be engaged. We're all on the front line. We're talking to our customers. They need to be engaged first before your own customers.
100%, Barry. And I think we're rounding out a little bit here. So this is Barry's favorite quote. I got to jam mine in there from Simon Sinek, so we're rounding it out with Barry's, and I think we're both a little bit have a bit of a man crush on Richard Branson. What he's done for this this whole concept of focusing on the employees above your customer, because it will in turn improve your customer engagement, is fantastic, and that sort of work is really starting to spread like fire across conferences, everywhere that you look. I think hopefully we'll get to the point where we don't have to actually talk about employee engagement in the sense of what it can do to customers, but in fact that customers are the be all and end all, and actually we really do understand that employee engagement and looking after our employees is enough to grow a business. So sort of put together a couple of takeaways here. You can read them on the screen, and obviously we'll send the slides at the end of this session here. But I think the biggest piece that we were looking at was, if businesses are focused so heavily on customers, what is it that makes that successful? And it's the metrics, it's the strategy, it's the plan. It's actually looking at what that, what does success look like and what does failure look like, and having some repercussions when those metrics aren't met. Start to think about employee engagement in much the same way, and with the same focus and the same vigor, and hopefully those results will start to come across.
There's one in particular that stands out for me, and it's been the messaging today, is the ability to apply a sales and marketing lens to your engagement. If we flip that on its head and apply the same lens to our employees, engagement will go through the roof. It's pretty obvious in that sense. So that one really resonates and sticks out for me. Yeah.
Awesome. So that's it, guys. Look, we've got time for a couple of questions, so I'll just throw it out there. Does anyone have any questions in relation to employee engagement? Give it a couple of seconds. All right, so I have one here from Dara. How do you get leadership to care? Barry?
It's a very broad question, Dara. Yeah, I think if we're talking about a lens here, leadership needs, leadership set the vision and mission for a business. How do you get them to care? I mean, I guess they have all the money, the dollars and cents in terms of being able to, bring this to the business. How to get them to care is basically get them, as I said, approach the same lens. Get them to the way they think about our customers and growing their business. The only people that are going to grow the business are your employees. So look at them as a customer. As I mentioned right in the beginning, if a customer churns, you'll hear your leaders, they'll be jumping up and down, but they should also be looking at it when employees churn as well. It's just as important to business.
100%. So just expanding on that, I think when we were really looking at some of those statistics at the beginning of the cost of disengagement and the cost of retention, the cost of churn, apply some of your own figures and really start to, like, in my experience anyway, SLT tend to understand sales and marketing because it comes with a dollar, either a dollar won or a dollar lost. If you can talk about employee engagement using dollars and cents, perhaps that's I guess that'd be probably my biggest piece of feedback. Put a hard cost on it and suddenly you've got finance's attention, suddenly you've got the CEO's attention, and attention is what you really need to start to drive those programs and engagement across the different departments.
Yeah, I guess another way to look at it, Cam, is when an employee leaves, often it's like, we'll find someone else, we'll replace them. But when a customer leaves or churns, you never hear that same messaging. So if you can flip it on its head and we can look at both in the same way, I think engagement will start to skyrocket. I mean, we need to start looking at our employees as customers and treat them just, if not better.
Yeah, 100%. We've got time for one more question. We've got one here from Danny. How do you measure engagement?
I think the key on surveys, right?
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, just flicking out a survey with a couple of questions and key takeaways is not good enough anymore.
No.
It's there needs to be a follow-up process. It needs to come back to that human element.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, when I say that question, I think, well, then how do we do it in terms of customers? And it's surveys. Like marketing have tools that here at Flow we're talking about NPS all the time. Net Promoter Score, and we use surveys to ask our customers, what do you like, what don't you like? And we take that feedback and we apply it. I think that's the main piece there, is actually listening to what the survey results say and acting upon it meaningfully. If it comes back to metrics, if this is a huge part of your job and a huge focal point for your function or for your business as a whole, then you will want to measure whether it's successful or not. That question won't be there. But I totally understand why that question will come up. I don't think many people have really, up until very recently, focused on employee engagement and trying to measure it. But if you're going to turn to a webinar that says your employee engagement sucks and how to fix it, you probably need to understand what your baseline is. So use some of those different tools, and happy to share some of those with you as well.
Yeah, from a product perspective, if a client asks for something to be implemented, something new, you go and measure whether it's worth it to the business. Again, I think we should, if an employee comes and has a suggestion, that they come with something meaningful to the table, we need to approach it in the same way, as opposed to, yep, I'll get back to you, and whether that person is junior all the way through to senior, we need to look at them as a client. We often talk in business that, at GO1, we have a messaging, we work with mum and dad businesses with 1 and 2 employees all the way through to clients with 200,000 users, and our messaging is that we treat every single client the same way. I completely think we need to start looking at employees in the same way. Someone who's just started on day 1 through to someone in the SLT team, we should look at it the same lens.
100%. All right, guys, so we said it would be 40 minutes. It was 48. Who would have thought that 2 salespeople wouldn't shut up? You probably could have guessed that. But look, thanks everyone for today. Really enjoyed going through employee engagement with you. If you want to find out more about Flare and GO1, you've got the links on the screen, or obviously punch it into Google. But really enjoyed the session today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the future for another one. Cheers.
Merry Christmas, everyone.